Hey, how are ya? If you know me, if you know this channel, you know what I'm about to say.
Well then.
Do I even have to say it? Give me more Final Fantasy 16.
What better world could one wish for?
Look, listen, let's be honest. Final Fantasy 16 is a very different Final Fantasy game, a very divisive game. Hell, I'd say it's up there with one of the most controversial and divisive titles in the whole franchise. And yet despite that, despite yet another Final Fantasy causing commotion in the fandom, Final Fantasy 16 is so unapologetically me, my type of game. I wouldn't say it's my favorite game in the series. Hell, it's not even in my top 3. But 16 represents so much of what I love about the art of video games. It isn't the most Final Fantasy video game, no, and quite frankly, dumbing down RPG elements in an RPG franchise was quite the odd choice. But does it provide an unapologetic Final Fantasy story? It's not even a question. A story that calls back to Final Fantasy 1 through 5, especially deconstructs those themes of crystals, magic being seen as hope, being seen as the savior of humanity, to crystals, magic being humanity's downfall. Does it provide an incredibly rich narrative of a severely fucked up individuals deeply scarred by the world around them, defined by their pain, defined by their loss, defined by their humanity, of what it means to fight for free will in a world where free will is barred, in a world where oppression is normalized. Now that is what I live for, man. The world Kazutoyo My Hero has written here is so captivating because it genuinely feels lived in, it feels real. A world where magic that was once revered in other stories is now feared by nations but exploited, controlled for personal gain, convenience, comfort, even at the expense of human life and those who wield such power. A way of life that spans hundreds of years. It is all too real. The writers have made it a point through every facet of the story that the world's problems can't be solved overnight. Where in many JRPGs, not all JRPGs, you have that classic trope of teenagers saving the world in what seems like, well, overnight. Like this huge conflict was solved in a matter of weeks or months. However, in 16, we are taken through Clive's life, not to ooh and ah at his glow up, his massive pecs screaming out of his shirt, but as a way to tell us that this teenager doesn't know how the fuck to save the world. How can he save the world when he doesn't even know the way of it, its true nature, who he is, or what he is? It's why I adore that 16 takes its time with Clive through years of wandering, experiencing, deconstruction, rebirth, resolution. Final Fantasy 16 emphasizes that change takes time, a lot of time. And within that time, within these 3 time skips, we get to know all these incredible characters, these dominants, who they are, what drives them to do what they do. Because Final Fantasy 16's story is at its highest, in my opinion, when we're shown how Valisthea has personally affected the lives of our characters. Whether it's Clive being sent to the Imperial front lines by his own mother because of her greed for power and self-preservation, or Jill being subjected to the Icon, forced to fight in a war when war itself was the very thing she hated. What about Joshua and the heavy burdens he's carried because of the societal structure, this inheritance placed upon him at so early an age? Because of his learning of Ultima, feeling like he had to take on that burden himself, keep Clive out of the clutches of this megalomaniacal maniac. And so yes, Final Fantasy 16's story is at its highest, most compelling when we see how this fucked up world changes these characters and naturally forces them on a path of wandering, healing, and resolution. But we also have a problem. While these are great characters, let's be honest, most of them need more time in the limelight. We simply don't have enough time with these characters outside of Clive. Every character in 16 has the potential to be as fleshed out as Clive, but because of the creative decision to make this Clive's story, everyone else feels as though they sit in the background, some more than others. The dominants themselves are so good. I mean, there wouldn't be any demand to see more of them if people weren't interested in their characters in the first place. But again, it just feels like we never got to see quite enough. Like, there were so many more stories to tell there. And why wouldn't there be? I mean, some things are better left as world building, some things are better left to the imagination. But at the same time, 16 has so much to tell, it's mind-boggling. They could pull from any piece of lore, any time period that took place during the events of the main game, and they wouldn't even scratch the surface of stories left untold. Let us see those stories, those years that aren't really needed to complete 16's already complete story, but can flesh out these beloved characters. And my god, 16 already gives us so many brilliant moments, but give us more quieter scenes like this between characters.
You're not a monster. You're the same man you've always been. Accept that, and you may yet escape your fate.
My fate?
Look, lad, you've had a hard life. And I don't see it getting much easier. You might not be able to save anyone else, but at the very least, you can save yourself. I'll try.
Or this.
And so I became their puppet. I let them pull my strings, telling myself it was not my hand that swung the sword, but another's. I removed myself from the truth so I wouldn't feel the pain it caused. And before I knew it, I no longer felt anything at all. I had become a monster.
It's these types of moments in any Final Fantasy story I care more about than the battles, the spectacle, or larger-than-life fantastical moments. But the moments where a story can take the time to slow down, give us these deeply intimate, personal scenes that bring us closer to these characters, that is what I live for, man. If you don't believe that I'm not the only one who wants to see FF16 expanded, maybe, I don't know, create a compilation instead of always leaving behind these beautiful worlds with still so much to tell on the shelf, never to be seen again. Well, I made sure to ask all of you guys, this small community of Final Fantasy enjoyers, what type of stories, games you would like to see within the world of Valisthea if we were to ever return. And really, I cannot thank you guys enough if you are someone who participated in this, because I got over 50 responses, all relating to what you guys would love to see. Sure, that's probably not a lot to someone much bigger than me, but it certainly is for me. So instead of listening to the boring ramblings and ideas from someone like me, why not take it from one of our first comments? This comes from This Is Valisthea, and they say, a prequel following Cid's story, notably his life as Lord Commander in Waloed, which would thus chronicle the downfall of Barnabas and Benedicta following after him. In terms of gameplay, I'll take anything from FF16 style to tactic style. Listen, this is probably the most popular request, not only from these comments, but from 16 as a whole. You know it, I know it, Cid is arguably the most popular and beloved character there is in 16 besides Clive, and there's no denying that. I mean, how can we blame people? The man is an absolute giga chad. So obviously when Cid makes his sacrifice so that Clive and Jill can carry on where he left off, we all got emotional, we all shed tears. Cid was the Master Yoda to Clive, his mentor. And the way I see it, it's here where Clive starts his journey to becoming the hero Valisthea needs. So what better way to appreciate the apprentice's story even more than telling the story of the mentor? I mean, don't just take it from me, listen to the localization director himself, Koji Fox, talk about the potential for a Cid prequel.
I love that character, and yeah, he has such a weird and deep backstory, you know, all the stuff with Benedicta and his time with Waloed and coming from the continent, and so you think there's got to be, and you know, and there's the allusions to stuff as well, like the battle that he has with Dion in, you know, the in Sambrec before they come in, like, oh yeah, that was broken because the last time I just bashed through the wall up there, ha 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 ha, and it's like, what happened? And so there is a great story there. I would love to explore that more. I do recall having a conversation with Yoshipi saying that, like, yeah, if anyone out there like approaches us for like a TV show or a movie, we should definitely have like Cid be the main character. That would be so cool.
We've all asked these questions in our head, I bet, about what happened between Cid and Benedicta for the relationship to become as strained, as complicated as we see it in the events of 16. We may have gotten hints, we may have gotten an idea, but we don't have the full picture.
Tell me about this, Benedicta.
The best and worst decision I ever made.
How did Cid end up meeting Barnabas, and what were the events that led to their falling out? Why did Cid leave Benedicta and Waloed when we're told throughout the story how much Cid cared for her? Is it because of her unyielding loyalty to the hands that fed her, her fear of losing that power, that wealth that she had gained? These same habits of undying, blind loyalty that ended up being her demise in the first place. Look, do we need this story? Absolutely not, but like with any prequel, any great prequel, it'll only serve to enhance what's already there, make us appreciate the present because of those who walked history's path. And Final Fantasy 16, this particular popular idea of a Cid prequel, can truly be something unforgettable. From our friend Matt TGM, he says, I don't think there's actually too many stories that can be told after the ending. The way to go is backwards. Cid's story before the game, Jill's time with the Ironborn, maybe some stories from the time of the Fallen. And it's as our friend Matt here says, I don't want to go forward. Hell, the last thing we need is for yet another Final Fantasy game to try and go and pick up from a masterful conclusion, only to end up retreading old ground, but this time just way worse and weirder. 16 had an incredible ending that wrapped up everything it was building up to, everything the Outlaws, Clive, Cid strove for a world where men could live and die on their own terms. An ending where humanity is free to make their own choices, trusting, relying on the power of mankind and not of the comfort that crystals bring. An ending, I promise that's the last time, that will take on a life of its own because of the players, because there is simply beauty in interpretation. We also have Jill. Many have this notion that she's a bad character, but I'm sorry, I just don't see how we've come to that conclusion. So much of what makes Jill a good character is emphasized in the relationship, in the bond she has with Clive. And good lord, some even have the gall to say it's the relationship and not the character that's good, but how can a relationship be so intimate, captivating, real, so well written if the characters aren't themselves well written, handled with care? Jill is a mirror to Clive and his experiences. Both have been forced into fucked up situations, forced to fight in wars against their will. Both seeing no way out, no salvation in life, only death's gentle embrace.
But if it was me who killed Joshua and Murdoch and all the others, then why the hell am I still breathing?
I ask myself the same. That day in Dalmekia, I wanted to join them. I wanted it all to end. I couldn't bear it anymore. If living meant being that, better to be just another body.
These are two people who understand each other the most, even more so after everything they experienced in those 13 years. It's her willingness to fight despite it all, despite her hatred for war. This world owes them nothing, not after how it treats its bearers and its dominance. Yet we are shown time and time again that despite suffering from the crystal's curse, despite all she went through, she will put herself in the crosshairs if it means Clive and Joshua will be safe. Everything she does because of love, and love first, and everything else comes after. She isn't poorly written, far from it, but like with the dominance, she is painfully underutilized. It seemed like after her big moment in Ironhome, the writers just kind of left her in the background. It's not until you get to Waloed where I'd say her arc finally reaches its conclusion, where Jill reassures Clive of his humanity, that he isn't the monster he believes, and in turn, that being a reflection on her and how she previously viewed herself. The beach scene was the moment both of them found their resolve in themselves and their humanity, and not of the power of the icon. It's like I said previously, give me more of these smaller moments with Jill that bring us into her state of mind. Maybe we get a story of what Jill was doing during the restoration of the hideaway. I mean, we know during this period that Clive and Jill's relationship was in a state of limbo. People were busy trying to rebuild what was lost after Sid died, trying to find a new hideaway where the Empire would be hard-pressed to pursue. Within those 5 years, there's tons of stories to tell, and we could easily get a Jill-focused game or DLC within that time. As for a story about the Fallen, I think if this was done right, it could genuinely change the way we view Valisthea, change the way we view Ultima. As we know, Ultima is Valisthea. He is its history, and his influence spans its entire being. Ultima represents mankind, the people of Valisthea. He represents the oppressive force that has plagued its history, the higher powers Clive faces through the entirety of 16. Which is why when we face Ultima in the end of the game, and Clive reminds him that he is as flawed as his creations, that he isn't all-knowing and powerful, that we see his godlike persona crack in the denial he expresses. It is absolutely brilliant.
No. My will is inviolable. Something is wrong.
You're afraid. You always have been. From the moment the Blight exposed what you were, weak, you conceived us to prove otherwise. But the result shook you to the core. For in us you saw yourself, and realized we had the potential to be more than you could ever be. And so you turned your back on your creation, your back on the world, like the coward you are.
You think you know me? You know nothing, Logos. Nothing.
So heck yeah, the idea of exploring a story about the Fallen, how close they got to matching Ultima's power, how do we say no to that? It would be so interesting to see how Ultima reacted to this if he ever showed hints of cracking like he did when Clive challenged his idea of godhood. Now, how about a story for those who really get deep into the lore? The next comment from Nickel says, a prequel tactics game that follows the man who would one day establish Rosaria and become known as the founder. Now, first off, I am one of those people, and I know I'm not the only one who wants more than anything to see a tactics game set in the world of 16 of Valisthea. I don't think there's really any Final Fantasy game that better fits that type of game than 16. Creative Studio 3 has the perfect chance to do what Final Fantasy Tactics did for 12. That type of story, that type of memorable prequel, that gameplay would fit so many time periods we have yet to see, like, of course, Sid's backstory, his time as the commander of Waloed's army. Or what about playing as Elwyn, Clive's father, following his time quelling the Northern Territories and eventually saving Jill? Or, as our friend Nickel suggests, seeing the very foundations of how the most honorable house in all of Valisthea came to be, Rosaria. Who is the founder, and why does every Rosarian refer to them as like a god?
Founder, it really is you.
Founder, help me.
Thank the Founder.
What I would love to see is something along the lines of what Tactics did in exploring these religious figures or figures that were turned religious as a way to control history. Obviously, 16's version of this is through the crystals, feigning their blessing throughout history as a way to maintain power and comfort. But the religious side of that is there, it isn't as fleshed out. Like, we need to know more about the Circle of Malleus, for example. Barnabas's religion, his mother's religion, a large part in why he turned to Ultima's side in the first place. But it's exactly deep lore like that type of nuance that really makes the world that much more believable. And finally, from Alley to the Moon, they say a prequel of Valisthea or even minor stories like elongated episodes from 15, with Dion, Joshua, Elwyn, even and especially Jill. A suggestion similar to the rest, we've talked about Sid, Benedicta, Jill, hell even Elwyn. But what about the boys Joshua and Dion? Joshua, while a great character, suffers as much as all the other dominants as just not getting enough screen time because this is Clive's story. Dion, while another great character, also doesn't get enough screen time because this is Clive's story. Although what I love about 16 is that we can actually get characters with complete arcs, and we're not left scratching our heads wondering why they were even in the story in the first place. Joshua struggled with the burden placed upon him his entire life. The burden of the Phoenix, a weight so heavy to carry for one so young. He couldn't protect his father, he couldn't protect his people. And this alien now threatens to subjugate the entire realm, subjugate his own brother, the one person who was always there to protect him. And so of course Joshua would want to protect the last of his family from this oppressive world. Just as Clive had protected him, Joshua would do the same. And in the end, it was ultimately his flames that brought Clive back from the brink, his flames that pushed Clive to victory.
All to ensure that whenever our nation stood on a precipice, the Phoenix would rise from the flames to drag us back from the brink. The fate of Rosaria sits on the dominant shoulders. It is your duty to bear that burden. With me, Phoenix.
Forevermore.
Dion, much like the Rosaria family, is honorable and loyal, but not to a fault. He's a man who can recognize treachery and acts on his morals. Seen by the people as their protector, their savior, it's by his hand through no fault of his own, but his hand nonetheless that he raises the crystalline dominion and the livelihood of all of his people to the ground. Dion's whole purpose, his reason for being, was his loyalty to his people. So to be the one to bring those same people to their knees in an already panicked world is brutal. It breaks him, demoralizes him, and the only way he can live with himself is by throwing himself in the fire alongside Clive and Joshua for atonement, for forgiveness of his people. Even though in the end, those people will never know his sacrifice, will never know he fought for their future. So yeah, these are incredible characters with incredible writing, incredible arcs. But even still, I can't help but want more. Maybe it is because this is simply Clive's story and most of the screen time is on him. Or maybe it's because these characters were so good, so nuanced that I just want more. Perhaps both. Would it not be cool to see Joshua in his training arc with Yote by his side, training him with the sword, working with the Undying, the secret organization of Rosaria, and discovering the existence of Ultima? The game teased us by putting us in Joshua's shoes only to never let us play as him again. And yeah, maybe that was a juxtaposition of Clive and Joshua, a thematic choice to get us ready for the eventual face-off between two icons in the finale of that intro. But I want to be put in the shoes of a more experienced Joshua still learning the ropes of who he is, of what this world truly entails. Let me play as Dion. Let us experience his battles that led up to the famous battle at Belenus Tor war with Odin? Or how about, I don't know, the fact that Dion and Cid had a run-in with each other that we never get to see? Hell, we never even see these two together on screen at all in the main game. But I mean, just imagine that dynamic between Dion and Cid. Did they know each other well, or was this simply a one-time encounter? There are so many moments in the history of Valisthea, moments in 16 that can be further explored, moments that will only serve to enhance that already rich world Final Fantasy 16 has. And while this compilation isn't perfect by any means, Final Fantasy 7 gave us so many stories, gave us so many wonderful and not so wonderful games that I can appreciate because it made that universe that much more believable and real to me. So many characters are expanded on that simply make you view Final Fantasy VII itself in a different light every time you play it. So yeah, I believe prequels can be a really great idea. When given the right team, the right vision to expand on that particular universe, you create unforgettable world stories that will live on forever, take on a life of its own. And though we may inevitably get some of those stories in the brand new Logos lore book releasing in March of next year, nothing beats a full-on adaptation where all of these forms of art are united to create another unforgettable fantasy. So while Creative Studio 3 has moved on to their next world, their next fantasy, I hope that they remember that they don't forget that the world of Valisthea still has so much more to tell.